Welcome to the Football Show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin, Alison McConnell and Tam McManus are here with me in the studio, and here's what's coming up.
Nick Montgomery vows to inject a new style of play into Hibs after replacing Lee Johnson as manager.
Philosophy, I don't really like to use that word either. I think I'll try to bring a new identity to the club.
Steve Clarke will revisit Elliot Anderson and Harvey Barnes' situation after Scotland versus England final whistle.
Playing England, you want to speak about Elliot, you want to speak about Harvey. I quite like speaking about the boys that I've got because they've put us in a really good position.
Gareth Southgate admits England could pinch Newcastle United's Elliot Anderson after the midfielder quit the Scotland camp. Hearts boss Eva Olid claims women's football was used as a vehicle to oust Luis Rubiales by people that don't care about the sport.
I think that a lot of people that don't care about women's football use that because they wanted him out.
Yeah, lots to talk about, and of course we'll be celebrating Scotland and that great performance. But first and foremost, over 10 years of the Football Show. Certainly I don't think we've ever been involved in a situation that developed over the weekend, and certainly our thoughts on the Football Show go out to everyone who sadly lost someone in the earthquake in Morocco, and our very own Alan Ruff was involved in it. Ruffy, I'm delighted to see your smiling face there because it must have been a harrowing experience for you, but you're okay.
Yes, certainly wasn't that 3 days ago, Peter. It was a horrendous experience, I think, not just for me, but anybody in the region, anybody who witnessed the experience that night at 11:15 on Friday. It was probably my scariest moment of my lifetime anyway.
2 miles, an earthquake like that has a rippling effect which, can affect such a wide and vast area.
Yeah, I have to say, Peter, obviously the focal point was 30 mile away from where we were, and the experience we had in our hotel apartment was horrendous. Everything was just moving about. I actually thought that the room was going to half in two at one stage. It only lasted a minute, but it was the longest minute ever. I think everybody didn't know what to expect. There was movement in the walls, movement in the floor, everything was flying about all over the place, and people just didn't know what to expect, what was next vibration, what it was going to mean. Fortunately for us, it wasn't. It just passed by, but horrendous for the people in Marrakesh. We just left Marrakesh the day before in a lovely wee rehab. It was beautiful. And to see the devastation that happened there is unbelievable. The people who went there on holiday will be absolutely dumbfounded of what they've experienced and the lovely places that they went to the day before, and it is now complete and utter devastation. And the amount of people, I think we're at 2,200 people dead, and obviously the outlying villages, but even the people in our hotel, as you can hear, are just moving on day to day. There has been a lot of people, offering donations, things like that, even offering blood if they can go through that kind of thing. So although it is a holiday destination, you can feel there is a bit of sympathy in the area for the people who aren't here, and the people in Marrakesh and the outlanding villages who are suffering the loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Ruffy, I think we echo the sentiments of not only yourself and your wife Maggie, everyone here. Our hearts go out to everyone who has been impacted by the earthquake and lost their lives. And of course, from our own point of view, delighted to see you're okay, and you'll be back with us next Friday on the show. Great to see Ruffy okay after that, just slightly digressing away from the football. But of course, once we heard he was right in the epicentre of that earthquake, we obviously wanted to make sure he was all right. So Ruffy joins us on the show. That will of course involve a fee, but nevertheless we had to take one. Had to take one for the team.
Still with Chelsea,
yeah, I was on Stonewall.
He's got all-inclusive band on as well, so
yeah,
you can go and get a wee drink.
Absolutely, and of course, and thankfully he didn't put the Ray-Bans on to actually do the interview, but we're delighted he's okay. But again, I'd like to reiterate, our hearts go out to people who've lost their lives in that area. So, from Ruffy to one of his former clubs, because the main news is that Hibs have appointed Nick Montgomery as the new manager of Hibernian. He's come from Central Coast Mariners on a 3-year deal, and of course I think everybody wants to know what the plan is. Our man Patrick Mullen was there to find out.
Hibernian have announced a new head coach this morning. It will be Nick Montgomery from the Australian side Central Coast Mariners. He signed a 3-year contract and he wants to bring a new identity to this Hibernian side, and that all starts this Saturday against Kilmarnock.
Well, they can expect a team that are going to give 100%, number one. They're going to work hard. In terms of philosophy, I don't really like to use that word either. I think I'll try to bring a new identity to the club. And that's not easy to do, but I think with hard work on the training ground and the buy-in from the staff, the players, and the fans and the community, I really want to push this club forward and just bring a real work ethic and good style of play that people will come and enjoy to watch.
It's been just 2 weeks since Lee Johnson was fired as Hibernian manager. There's been plenty of names thrown about as who could replace him. Would it be Neil Lennon? Would it be Stephen Robertson? Well, the board has settled on Nick Montgomery, and the CEO, Ben Kensell, said today he was always their number one choice.
Nick was our number one candidate from the start, if I'm completely honest. As soon as we knew that Nick might be accessible, available, we knew that we would be hard pushed to get a better candidate than met our criteria. Others were interviewed, but ultimately I think there was always a focus on, if you've got a number one target, you go after that number one target until you believe that you're struggling to appoint them, and we always thought that we had a chance.
So he's the number one choice. What do you make of it?
I think it's quite an exciting one for the Hibs supporters, gauging on social media. I know it's not much of a gauge, but it probably is now in the modern times, but a lot of Hibs supporters seem to be quite excited by Nick. I think if you look at his management style at Central Coast, they averaged about 2 goals a game. They were very, very entertaining to watch. They were attacking football. He took that club literally from the bottom of A League to the top of A League. He got the best out of Jason Cummings, which is a great nod towards his man management skills. And listen, he's not been scarred with any disappointments. It's his first job at Central Coast. It's went terrifically well. He comes to Hibs with a great CV in terms of Australian football. He's never coached here, which, some people might see as a negative, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. I think he's got a strong squad of players at Hibs. I think in the forward areas, Hibs have got plenty of options, and, if he's an attacking coach, I think he's going to get in there. He's going to see the likes of Ellie Johan, Adam Lafondra, who knows from Australia, Martin Boyle, and he's going to be excited to get going.
A couple of weeks ago, you're obviously slightly worried about it because you won't understand the league. Is it a big gamble in your mind?
I don't think it's a big gamble, Peter. I think it is a gamble. I think every management appointment is a gamble. I think he's young. He's pretty inexperienced. I think he's only managed or coached in 60 games. So I think Hibs are taking a little bit of a flyer. But if the fans get behind him and he gets time off the board, then I think he can be successful, because I think he's got all the tools there at Hibs to be successful. They've got a great stadium, a great training ground. He's got expensively gathered squad of players, and I think he's just got to get the best out of them. He's got to get them defensively, more structured. David Gray got a clean sheet out of them at Aberdeen. If they can keep clean sheets, Hibs, then they'll be in the shake-up for third place this season. Yeah,
Ali, the one thing that he does have, hopefully, is a board now that can settle and say, okay, give him the time. The last manager was backed, but it was like a roller coaster, as Tam has mentioned, time after time.
I think time is the one thing that no one gets at Hibs. I think if you look at the managers that they've gone through of late, I think he'll know that he has to get it right. Whether or not they are inclined to stick with him for a bit longer with the viewpoint that some stability might generate the result that they want remains to be seen. But I would touch on what Tam said. I think the thing that jumps out at you, there are two aspects for me that jumped out. One, the fact that he really focused on an attacking way of playing, and I think Hibs' forward line is suited to that. But secondly, that he has 60 games of experience. I think it might be quite a steep learning curve for him when it's not going well and there is pressure at Hibs. I think if you're not performing to a certain standard, then there's pressure very, very quickly. So it'll be interesting to see just how he copes with that.
Is it a learning curve that maybe the board have to go through to stop this knee-jerk reaction? Is it time for them to maybe take a little bit of stock here and say, right, we've got to give this guy more time, because they are notorious?
Yeah, I think you and I can talk about that and outsiders can point to it. I think the reality is that there are very few managers who get time now. I think you're judged fairly quickly. I also think given the finances around clubs that it maybe forces their hand a bit quicker than maybe sensible. So from an outsider's point of view, there's an argument to say you've got to ride it through difficult times. I'm not sure that that's a reality at clubs.
Okay, and the reality is if you don't produce, especially early on in the season, you can get the sack. Lee Johnson gets sacked, and then he jumped into a job because Scott Brown gets sacked. That's what I call a managerial merry-go-round. Scott Brown obviously had a great cup run last season with the Fleetwood, and a credible finish in the league as well, but didn't start well. 5 defeats from the opening 6 league games, and suddenly he's out and Lee Johnson's in.
Yeah, I think it's staggering, to be honest, that Lee Johnson's straight back in. I didn't think he'd done a particularly good job at Hibs. I think he's experienced. I think, I spoke to Charlie Adam last week, and I think Charlie, would have been pretty interested in that job as well. But the first thing he said was the Fleetwood board were looking for somebody that's had a lot of experience. One thing about Lee Johnson, he's managed a lot of games. He's coached down there at Bristol City, Sunderland. Fair play to him. He must be good at interviews. He must have went into that Fleetwood, board and blew them away. Because he's straight back in. I think Hibs might be happy because I don't know how the severance package went. He might have been in gardening leave until I get another job. That maybe helps Hibs as well. So, listen, good luck to him. It didn't work out at Hibs. That doesn't mean he's a bad manager. He might go down to Fleetwood and do really, really well. But it just shows you, how precarious a position a manager is. When you look at Scott Brown, done great last season, signed a new contract in the summer.
He signed a new contract,
signed a new deal, and then 6 games into the season he's sacked. So that's the life of a football manager nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll go back to the life of a football manager a little later on in the programme and talk about Michael Beale, because it was a weekend of mad rumours and social media going crazy, so we'll discuss that.
Photographs.
Yeah, absolutely. Who changes the photograph on their Instagram? It must be a news story. Anyway, we'll discuss that a little later on. Tammy McManus and Alison McConnell here with me. Don't forget, you can hit the subscribe button and join the football family. If you download the app, you've got all the stories at your fingertips. So what about Scotland? Great to be a Scotland fan right now. Great to be watching Scotland winning games consistently as well and playing some really good football. Our man Adam Binney is following the Scotland camp ahead of the big match for the 150th anniversary against the old enemy.
150 years ago, Scotland and England contested the first ever match of International Association football here at West of Scotland Cricket Club in Partick, Glasgow. Fast forward a century and a half and these two nations meet for the 116th time, this time at Hampden Park, in a friendly match to mark the 150th anniversary of one of the most important milestones in world football history. This may just be a friendly match, but this is a fixture steeped in history, involving a rivalry that has outlived football as we know it. For the lucky few who have experienced firsthand what this derby means, it simply does not get much bigger.
I mean, the games against England are just sensational, like Scotland-England games, whether it be a friendly or whether it be a game in the Euros or a qualification game, they are extra special, all the rivalry that comes along with it.
I think the Scotland-England games are unique. Yeah, I mean, I always said we could play England at Tiddlywinks and you'd want to beat them. That's the bottom line. So the rivalry is there, that will never change, and it's a great occasion.
I also wanted Scotland to do well. I still want Scotland to do well, but not on Tuesday.
Scotland will be without Elliot Anderson tomorrow night, who was named in the first team squad for the first time ahead of this camp. He left the squad last week after picking up an injury in training, but some quotes released today from Gareth Southgate indicated that the FA were still keen to persuade the Newcastle midfielder to pledge his international allegiance to his country of birth. The situation surrounding Anderson and the potential of adding Harvey Barnes to the Scotland setup is something that manager Steve Clarke will address before the next international break.
Probably the same comment is to think about that after. We want the best players we can possibly get. If they're eligible for Scotland and they've got a chance to play for us and they can improve the squad that I've got, which is not an easy thing to do. And I get all the story around it because we're playing England, so you want to speak about Elliot, you want to speak about Harvey. I quite like speaking about the boys that I've got because they've put us in a really good position and they deserve a lot of credit for that.
There is perhaps nobody in Scottish football more qualified to deal with the challenges of a big derby match than Celtic midfielder Callum McGregor, who admitted that matches against the old enemy are similar to the Old Firm derby.
Yeah, probably much the same, to be honest. Like you said, that kind of Scotland-England rivalry, then it's a big game. You want to play in big games and try and give your absolute maximum as an individual and collectively, and again, that's the goal tomorrow night.
Of course, tomorrow night there is the added bonus of Euro 2024 qualification should Norway and Georgia draw. But for Steve Clark, it's all eyes on England. That's all from Hampden. Back to you in the studio, Peter.
Yeah, thanks to Adam there following the Scotland's preparations for that match against England. Really looking forward to it, because if we can go back to that game against Cyprus, boy, did we play some good football.
Yeah, I thought it was very comfortable. I thought Scotland looked hugely composed. There was no nerves, no anxiety about it. Sometimes, as we've seen in the past, that Scotland can punch above their weight and then struggle when they go into teams that would be perceived to be beneath them. But I thought it was a very professional approach, a very professional performance. Could have been more goals. I thought they just managed it once they got to 3-0, just managed the game. I think there's an optimism about the national squad and about just what kind of level can they reach and where they can go just now. And I think tomorrow night will be interesting as a barometer of that. I've just seen how they measure up against an England side, and it's a friendly. I don't think you would get too carried away about tomorrow night's game, but I think there is a definite level of intrigue at how Scotland will compete.
Yeah, and the other thing about it, Tam, is the way we are going about our business, because the run that we're on at the moment and the way we're playing, and of course clean sheets are always celebrated, so you've got the back line celebrating clean sheets, you've got the midfield that's just purring at the moment, and up front as well. We're scoring goals, so we're a threat, and the reason why I'm so optimistic is because there's 2 or 3 players in the wings, whether it's Elliot Anderson or not, or a Harvey Barnes. There's a Ben Doak to look forward to that might push for next year if we get to the Euros.
Yeah, I think our squad looks, incredibly strong at the minute. I think in the past, you'd have been looking at that game against Cyprus and thinking, oh, this is a banana skin for us. I never ever felt that in this game. I felt we would win this game comfortably, just because the mentality the squad's got, the manager's got, it's just one game at a time, just go and win the game. And we're on such a great run at the minute. You don't see us slipping up. Obviously, it's a big test tomorrow night. England are a top side with some fantastic footballers. But if you look at their midfield and you look at our midfield, I don't think any of our midfield would be out of place. I think obviously in the forward area is a little bit more stronger than us. So it's going to be great and interesting to watch. As Ali said, how do we stack up? Because England will be one of the favourites for me to win the Euros. So how do we stack up? When we go there in Germany next year, how we just go in there to maybe get out of the group, or we go in there with a real opportunity to do something, maybe get into the latter stages. So this will be a good test for us.
If we get out of the group, if we get there first of all, calm your jets. I was just about to say, we want to get there, right? No, but do you want to tell you something? There's actually comments from other players playing in this group who are saying, we will reel Scotland in. Here's the group table. I mean, Tam, we should be. Only Scotland could blow it from there. I know, but honestly, it's incredible. We'll know by Tuesday. We're in a situation where we could qualify by Tuesday, but the group's just brilliant, Tam.
Yeah, listen, I think you've got to be looking to win the group now. Obviously, I think the Spain game is the next game away from home. I think that's. Listen, if Spain win that, they'll think they've got a sniff of winning the group again. If you can go over there and even get a point, then I think you win the group. But there's no way we're not picking up another point from the last 3 games. We're going to Germany, and as I said, I want to know in this England game tomorrow, are we just going to qualify, or are we going to what?
Yeah,
we all get carried away.
Well, I was just about to say, he's gone mental, by the way. I'm not even going to mention the time it is, but I almost think he's had a few lagers. But we're slightly more cynical on it, Ali, because we're thinking, can we be caught?
Yeah, I would agree, but I fully expect Scotland to qualify. I think they've put themselves in a formidable position. You'll know tomorrow night if it's
a draw. Is it a draw gets us through?
Yeah.
They draw, yeah.
I think the ambition has to be to go and win this group now, just given the fantastic start that they've had. But ultimately, the aim is to get there by any means necessary. I think that looks pretty certain. I think it looks as though Scotland are on their way. I would temper that by saying you have to wait and then see what kind of group you're qualified what group you're placed in when you get there. And I think, given Scotland's history across the last 2 decades of missing out on all these tournaments, of going down to the European Championships the last time, but I think getting out the group stages would be regarded hugely as a big result.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget the erratic nature of Tam's punditry. He's got us at the getting out of the group. By next week, he'll have us in the semi-finals, and then, of course, playing England in the final as well. But I certainly would. I'd love us all to be. Everybody's staking their claim at PLZ for Germany. I mean, we need to go on a bus. We need Cliff Richard at the front driving it.
We need to go. We need to go. So stick your money away, stick your budget away, Peter, because we're going to Germany.
Yeah, certainly would be.
But I'm going with my pals.
Yeah.
I'll go with yous.
It would be a joy if we could get there, and I think the Tartan Army will go crazy. They'll go crazy if they can defeat England as well, because there's always that little bit of needle involved in it. I'm not speaking out of turn by saying there's a certain, at times, arrogance about what England have at their disposal and where they are in the overall ladder in comparison to Scotland. I think the gap's been huge before, but as Tam mentioned there, maybe now Steve Clarke has closed that. There certainly won't be an inferiority complex among the Scotland players. Just a little note, is it a little bit of skullduggery in Gareth Southgate's mind when he's talking about Elliot Anderson? He pulled out of the squad. This is what Gareth Southgate had to say, obviously, on the situation. Obviously, he was called into the squad earlier in the week, and I don't know what the position is at the moment. I saw that he'd pulled out. Let's see. That's something that others at the organisation will be picking up. He's definitely a player we like. I think, suddenly we're looking at him and Harvey Barnes considering a switch to Scotland because of his grandparents. I say the more the merrier, but in the midfield area, you struggle to get in it.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting comment from Steve Clarke when he said, I'm happy to have players that come in and enhance the squad, but it's not entirely an easy thing to do given the standard that's here at the minute. It's saying that Scotland would take both of them. They would take them if they came or offered their services. In terms of the Southgate comment, I'm not sure if it's skullduggery. I don't see that about him. I don't know that he's got that side to him. However, I think if the boy's swithering and there's an invitation from England and an assurance that he may have a place in that squad, I think he would possibly go there, and that would be your inference from what happened last week.
Yeah, okay, we'll wait to see if that indeed is the case with Elliot Anderson, but there's a feel-good factor about it at the moment, and everybody wants to be involved in the Scotland squad. There's certainly none of the people who are in the squad at the moment thinking they're picking up injuries that don't really suggest that they should be pulling out of the squad. Everybody wants to play, and they certainly want to play in the game against England, because it's a good barometer of where you are in your standard as well, coming up against a team like England, who are, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, maybe more, in the latter stages of major tournaments.
Yeah, they have been. Obviously, they lost in the final to Italy, and they were very, very close to winning the Euros. So, as I said, I think they'll be one of the favourites to win it, possibly behind France, maybe second favourites to win the tournament. So it'll be great for the English player, the Scottish players that play in England. I think that's, going back to your clubs, going back to Man United, your Brightons or whatever, and your the banter that comes with that, if you win this game. So no, it's a friendly game, but I don't think it's going to be treated like that. I think there's going to be, obviously it's a sellout, it's a packed house. There's a real feel good factor about Scotland in a minute, and I think Stevie Clarke will play his strongest team. I think he'll play the bones of the team that played against Cyprus. I don't think he'll be resting players and trying things out. I think this is a game that he will want to win badly as well.
And the 150th anniversary shirt has been released. It's been flying off the shelves everywhere, and the Tartan Army will demand something a wee bit special. If they defeat England, I think the whole country's just going to go through the roof.
Yeah, I think we might be trying to temper the optimism that surrounds him. I would agree. I think he'll play his strongest team. I think he'll want to see himself just how they measure up, where they are, with a view towards looking at the next summer and seeing just exactly where Scotland are against elite level clubs. I think there's always a feeling that Scotland maybe take the game a bit more seriously than England in a position like this. I think England know where they are. I think sometimes you get a feeling that they could go through the gears if they needed to, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out at Hampden in front of a full crowd. It was interesting the last time that they were there.
Yeah.
Watching Braveheart, Rob Roy, all the movies before the game, Scotland players.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you, the only thing that haunts me constantly, and Ruffy and I automatically, when we talk about that game, Scotland-England, on the last occasion when it finished 2-2, we look at each other and we just automatically scream, Craig Gordon, take the ball and take Harry Kane and bang both of them into row Z, and we're there. I mean, it's the only thing that sticks in my head, Tam, about that cross ball coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I think was it Stuart Armstrong was up the pitch as well. It's things you'll never forget, and it's easy to say after it, you should have done this, done that. On the pitch, it's a split-second decision, and unfortunately we didn't win that game. But you know, I wasn't at the game, but you'll probably, you know, back me up on this. Some of my friends were at the game. They said the noise when Lee Griffiths scored those free kicks was like nothing they'd ever experienced in their life. You've obviously been there.
It was incredible.
It was just.
It's the most animated I've ever seen a press box too. Like people were so excited. You know, it was so long since you'd last qualified, and to go.
Oh, incredible. I mean, it's the first time I've ever seen Chris Commons cuddle Kenny Miller. We were covering it for television and I couldn't believe it. We were trackside and I could see the ball coming over. You know, we're 2-1 up after 2 magnificent free kicks. I mean, absolutely outrageous. Joe Hart in goal, Lee Griffiths taking it. You know, there's all sorts of subplots along the way, but it didn't quite work out. A friendly? I don't think it'll be a friendly. Give us your prediction.
I'm going to go for a draw.
Yeah?
1 each.
I'm going to go for 2-1 to Scotland, and we'll go right up the board in the bookies to win it.
Yeah,
in Germany.
Okay, fantastic.
Tell you, I'm caught up in it. I think we're quality.
Yeah.
I think we've got a very good team at the minute, and I think we'll beat England.
Okay, magic. I'll go for a draw, 1-1. I'm with you, Ali. No, I'm with you, Ali. Just a wee bit more cautious, but I really agree with you on this. I think because of what I witnessed against Cyprus. Okay, it's Cyprus, and we have to temper things, as Ali mentioned as well. But for a long, long time, you know, even as a kid, I was, you know, brought up watching great. I thought Scotland qualified for World Cups all the time. I watched great players play. But this has got that real club feel about it, and there are players that excite you in the squad, and the way he's got them playing football, Tam, I'm enthused by it.
Yeah, it's not, and I think a lot of people pigeonhole Stevie Clarke as a kind of defensive coach. He was at Kilmarnock and stuff like that. You know, they sat in a lot, but he was at Kilmarnock. You know, and he finished third with Kilmarnock, and they've not been anywhere near that since. You know, or before that for a long time. You know, that shows you how good a manager he is. But we're not like that with Scotland. We don't sit in, we don't defend and play on a counter-attack or play for a set piece. We go at teams. We've seen that against Spain at Hampden. So I think we'll have a go at England. I think it'll be an open game. I think there'll be goals in it. But I think we can match them. And I think we can ultimately beat them on the night. We need to defend well, obviously. They've got great players up front. But I think in the middle of the park, I think we're just as good, if not better, than England.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you can give us your view on that. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. More and more people are doing it. They're getting involved in our Predictor League as well. You don't need to have started right at the very start. You can get involved right now and maybe win yourself a monthly prize. There's a big prize at the end as well for the overall winner. And quite a few of our pundits are getting involved to predict the outcome of the 6 Scottish Premiership matches. It's a good bit of fun to see exactly where you are in the league table. So we'll also be looking at, on Friday, the Scottish Premiership returning after the international break. And there's lots to discuss. Of course, when there's no domestic football on, usually you get all sorts of mad bits of action coming up, or suggestions or wild stories that come up on social media. And certainly with the change of a picture on Instagram, suddenly Michael Beale was off as Rangers manager. I don't know where that came from. I was looking at it and thinking to myself, you know, nowadays, Ali, I don't know about yourself, but I never ever just jump on anything because of, you know, something that they've made that looks official. And Michael Beale at this moment, so early in the season, is surely not going to get the sack. I can't see that.
I'm not sure I would be quite so sure about that. I think it's early. I think there's an argument to suggest he still needs a bit of time, but as we've spoken of, I don't think that's a given.
I don't think he was getting the sack in this window. I've said consistently since the summer, if he's points off Celtic and they're out of the Champions League group stages, I think he's under real pressure.
And I think this weekend's game is very interesting. I think if there's any points dropped on Saturday, I think then it becomes very, very difficult. He really comes under the microscope. I do think it almost needs to be unblemished until the next Celtic Rangers game at the end of December. It almost needs to be a perfect run just to alleviate any of the noise round about him. I think any slip invites further scrutiny, and I think it's indicative of the position he finds himself in now, that there was such a clamour on Saturday afternoon when that picture changes and he's out his club shirt and tie and into the QPR training gear. There was such a clamour, which tells you itself where he's viewed and how his position is viewed just now.
Interesting enough, you said it's got to be unblemished. You just mean domestically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Although, again, I think if you to come off the back of a couple of really heavy defeats again in Europa League, I think that does create questions too. But I think essentially domestically, it has to be a perfect run all the way to that 30th of December game at Celtic Park.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Ali. I didn't think he was going to get sacked in that window there. I just thought that would have been really harsh on him. I think they have to show a bit of backing. He's got a team that needs to blend in, Tam. It needs a bit of time. Of course, we're well aware that you don't get time as an Old Firm manager. If he slips up against what I would consider inferior opposition, if he goes 7 points behind Celtic, the Rangers fans will want him out.
Yeah, I think a lot of Rangers fans have made their mind up already, and I think it's difficult to turn that round, and unless you beat Celtic, which he's not been able to do yet. Obviously beat them once in a dead rubber game, but I agree with Ali. I think he's got to take care of St Johnstone, at the weekend, and then he's got to go on a run of games. I think their group in the Europa League's decent enough. I don't see them getting any hammers, that might be, I think it'll be quite competitive, that group. So I can see Rangers doing okay in that and maybe qualifying. But in terms of getting to that game against Celtic in December, he's got to be maximum 4 points behind. He can't fall any further behind, or I think he will be under severe pressure. But I think a lot of Rangers fans that I speak to have made their mind up already.
Does he have to, when you say keep winning those games domestically, does he have to win them in such a way that people can see they're entertaining?
No, Peter, I don't think so. I think with Celtic Rangers, it's just win the game. And listen, if you can do it in style, even better. Ange Postecoglou done that last season, won the treble, and played great thrilling football. Very difficult to do both. But in terms of Michael Beale at the minute, he just needs to win. If he wins 1-0 on Saturday, he wins, goes on to the next game, and he just keeps winning games.
Yeah, if at any stage, Ali, we see Tam changing his Instagram photograph or his Twitter, we know he's off. It's as simple as that, That's what happens.
Try that, get a raise at him.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh no, you can go. we've had badge kissers before, Ali, and they've all gone. And of course, the worrying thing is, your man's got a track record for it as well. Just ask Terry.
It's the longest I've ever been anywhere.
I know. Just ask Terry Butcher in Dundee and Motherwell.
To 26 clubs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex 15.
It doesn't fill me with any great confidence, but nevertheless, he's here. We're delighted he's here. But as far as changing your Instagram profile picture, it just went into meltdown, and all sorts of people.
That
I know. Honestly, they're over it. Well, they're over it with a microscope, as Ali mentioned, and of course then.
I think if you're a football manager just now, I'm not criticising it because it's good for us at times, but if you're a football manager now, I don't think you would be anywhere near.
Not if you're a Rangers manager just lost.
I don't think they do. I don't think they read it. I think they just blank it.
Other people may manage it for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a bit on a quiet Saturday to see what happens when you do.
Yeah, well, to be fair, if anybody managed my Instagram and somebody put a QPR tracksuit on me, I'd be having a quick word with them. Rangers have asked their scouts, some of them, to revamp it all. They're going to focus on data and video analysis. So a few scouts will be obviously looking for jobs elsewhere. They're going to move on. It's not down to the recent run of results or the club's transfer business. It's 7 scouts down to 3, and some other part-time staff who are overseas will depart. Now, basically, they're going to, they've streamlined it, and they're going to start to rely more on video technology, which a number of clubs do operate anyway, Tam.
Yeah, I think the game's moved on now, Peter. It's modern thinking. It's difficult to send people all over the world. I think it's if you can get videos of games and you can sit and watch them, then why would you not do that? I understand there's a lot of managers probably who like to go and see the player themselves and live, but but the amount of games it's on at the minute, and it's difficult for managers to get out to watch players. So Listen, I've no problem with that. I think a lot of clubs do this, in terms of their scouting. They've got technology, they've got the Y Scout, they've got, data coming in about players. And, once I think that comes back and a manager maybe thinks yes, then he could possibly then go and watch a player. But I've no problem with that. Unfortunately, I think John Brown was there, Billy Kirkwood, guys that have been at Rangers for a long time. I don't know if they're still going to be there or they're not going to be there, but John Part seems to be shaking things up a little bit in there, and it remains to be seen if it's going to work or not.
I have to ask you though, is there still a situation where you still have got a lot of old school managers who say, hold on, I'm going to go and have a look at this person?
Yep, I think there is. I think there's definitely, that Michael Beale's a young manager. Maybe he's had a word, and said, listen, I don't need to go to all these games. I don't need to go and watch players all the time. I want to be here and focusing on the squad I've got. So maybe that was a conversation that he had with the scouting department, or John Park had with the scouting department. So listen, it remains to be seen if it's going to work, because at the minute, the scouting from in the summer doesn't look as if it's worked. So maybe a fresh approach is required.
I think it's quite interesting in that I'm not sure that managers now always have such a huge say in players. I know obviously there's a say, but I think quite often clubs rely on data coming in and a whole process of recruitment rather than one individual call. Obviously I think a manager, you would like to think, and they would have a say in it and have a significant input in it, but I think sometimes you could question that it comes down to a club decision rather than an individual appointment.
Oh, you don't have to look at Chelsea. They've got a cast of thousands, and the manager certainly.
He's not watched all those. Budget,
there's been more managers than there has players at times, but nevertheless, they've been coming in a kind of a conveyor belt and then going out on loan as well. But it's after a game between Celtic and Rangers, one manager's feeling the heat, the other one it's rosy in the garden. Just a slight worry that Liel Abada is out for a month, picked up an injury on international duty, but he looks as if he's got other players that he'll certainly be hoping to try and bed in over the next 2 or 3 weeks in preparation for. In fact, it's only, you're looking at next week and the Champions League's off and running for Celtic.
Yeah, I think the win over Rangers obviously alleviated some of the noise around Brendan Rodgers. I think it was a fairly low-key start to the campaign. I'm not sure that they really set the heather alight in the opening weeks of the season. I think there's still big question marks over that squad. They had a busy final week of the window in terms of the players that they recruited. They've got a number of players waiting to come back in. So I'm not sure that you've really seen their strongest starting 11 yet. But as you say, there's not a huge amount of time. And again, I think sometimes a big defeat in the Champions League can invite a fair amount of pressure on a club and on a side. I think Celtic will want to go and acquit themselves fairly well in that tournament, but as we all know, it's a very exacting environment to be in, and then competing again domestically on a weekend. But I think you would maybe want to have a few of those players coming in before you start the Champions League campaign, so that you know who you've got and who your strongest players are.
Yeah, this is going to be the most testing period, I think, in his second reign as manager, Tam. This is where I think the real judgment will start to come in on a game-by-game basis for Brendan Rodgers. Is it a different Brendan Rodgers? Is there a different Celtic style? Away from home, at home, are they going to produce the results?
Yeah, I don't think this team and this squad is better than the one he had before. That's just my opinion. I think this group's slightly easier in terms of there's not a Barcelona or a PSG in there that you could think we could beat 6 or 7. I don't think there is that in that group. So I think Celtic can be more competitive in these games. But as Ali said, he needs to get players back. He needs Carter Vickers back, Hatate back, guys like that. Guys that go straight into your team. He's been unfortunate with injuries, Brendan Rodgers, so far, but the game coming up against Feyenoord, who seem to have a lot of injuries themselves, judging by press reports, I think they'll go over there quietly confident that he can get off to a good start.
Yeah, okay. You can give us your view on that. Well, it was the story of the last 2 or 3 weeks, certainly since Spain's women won the World Cup. There was a lot of people looking at it and wondering if the fallout from it with Luis Rubiales, the Spanish FA president, of course, people were looking and wondering whether he was going to resign. He was digging his heels in, but finally he's announced that he is going to step down. And I think the story will rumble on after that, but is it the right move from Rubiales?
Without question. I think the only thing he would say is why it took so long to get him to that position. He would like to think that this isn't the start of change. Well, sorry, it's not the end of the changes, but maybe the start of changes taking place. I think there's clearly been a culture of misogyny throughout that group. I think you saw that when he got up and spoke and how he was applauded and cheered on. I think you would like to think now that there will be substantial change that takes place across that regime, and not just in Spain. I think there are problems in other countries too, and other issues. I think you don't have to look too far to find those stories at the minute. So you would like to think that if female players go with complaints, that they're heard, that they're listened to, and that they're acted on.
Yeah, well, the manager's gone, and now Rubiales is gone, and maybe, as Ali mentioned there's going to be a change in the overall attitude towards, of course, training facilities, how they are treated when they're actually away in international duty. And this is a team that's delivered on the pitch, Tam.
Yeah, it is, and maybe this is a fresh approach that they need. You know, the two guys that have left, you know, maybe different people will come in with a different approach. You know, and we're coming into a team that's been very successful, and that's a sad thing. You know, so for these players now, I think they'll all be happy. Possibly the manager and the chief executives away, and they can get on with playing football. Because I think some of them were talking about going on strike and not playing. I think this clears the decks and they can just go on and concentrate on football now.
Yeah,
you had a dozen players that could have been at the World Cup who weren't because they didn't want to play under.
Yeah, the other aspect of it is it'll still rumble on in the courts as well, whether there's a solid enough case to actually take him to court too. But certainly from his comments to Piers Morgan, he's listened to his family and he is stepping down. Hearts women's boss Eva Olid said that people who don't care about women's football have used this incident to try and get Rubiales out.
I think that a lot of people that don't care about women's football use that because they wanted him out, no? But people that, women's football don't care, but they wanted for other things that were happening before.
I think Eva's point there is, you know, they were jumping on the bandwagon to get him out for their own agendas, not necessarily for the great and the good of women's football.
Yeah, to be fair, I think she was happy that he's gone, and I think what she was stressing was that her sympathy this last month has really been with the players whose achievements have been completely overshadowed by the circus, essentially, that has evolved since the final whistle, essentially, in Sydney, that they've had to endure all this hullabaloo rather than being celebrated for the achievement of going and winning the World Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see Eva Olid on the Women's Football Show. It's released on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. It's well worth watching to get an insight into Eva's ethos for the football at Hearts and ambitions for the club. And it's certainly a really forward-thinking move by Hearts as a club.
Yeah, and she's just signed a new 2-year contract. When she took over, Hearts, I'm sure, were bottom of the table. Hibs have a much greater pedigree in women's football. Hibs and Glasgow City at one point were the two dominant forces. So I think when Eva Olid went into Hearts, she had quite a significant challenge in trying to overhaul the culture within the team, within the club, to create an identity within the side. I think she made fantastic progress in the time that she's had, and she's had a fairly strong summer. I think 8 new players come in over the summer, and I think ultimately they'll be challenging for that 4th spot. I think very, very difficult to beat the top 3 and to challenge the top 3. I think they do have resources that would dwarf everyone else's, but I think ultimately her aim will be to really try and push for that 4th spot.
Yeah, okay. Women's Football Show, Tuesday, PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. And of course, there's so much variety that you can get involved in as we offer you more and more programming, not only documentaries, but regular programme, which is not just about the football show. Delighted that Lee McCulloch and Neil Lennon are our pundits alongside Ruffy and Tam McManus and Alison McConnell, Hugh McDonald and Tam Cowan as well. Because we have a programme, The Journos, which is journalism journalist, just basically talking about the issues domestically, internationally as well, that affect football, and that is always a good listen and watch on our podcast and on our YouTube channel. And certainly this week, Stephen McGowan will be our special guest on the programme, so well worth watching that. Over and above that, we've got Straight Talk, where each week I'm going to be interviewing my special guests, some in the world of football, some in the world of entertainment, and it's well worth watching. Right now, Sanjeev Kohli is out there, and it was an absolute blast listening to a very entertaining comic, actor, and of course writer as well. Worth watching if you get a chance. Really funny guy, and very intelligent, and a good listen on the podcast and on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. So that's just a variety of things, and of course Tam and I, as ever on a Saturday, will bring you the half-time, full-time. Our reporters are out at all the grounds in the Scottish Premiership, and Kerry and Tam and Ruffy bring you the preview of that on Saturday morning. So that gives you an indication of how much variety we're giving you. It's certainly more than most of the television and radio channels. Our commitment to Scottish football and beyond. Download the PLZ Soccer app and you'll get all the breaking stories at your fingertips and all that unique video content that I've just spoken about. So really looking forward to getting back into it before too long. Hansi Flick, just before we go, sacked by Germany. We talk about, knee-jerk reaction from boards near and far. The Germans are certainly not going to suffer a 4-1 friendly loss to Japan, and they decided that his time is up.
Yeah, shocker. Playing Japan, 4-1 defeat. The Germans have been poor recently. They were obviously poor in the World Cup as well. I think they were out early as well. So, they're not going to stand for that. They obviously expect to be up there challenging. They're not going to accept, even if it is a friendly, getting hammered against Japan. So I think Rudiales coming in to take the job as well. So no, they've got a very, very talented pool of players, and they shouldn't be getting beat 4-1.
It's the first time they've sacked a manager since 1926. I mean, that's outrageous.
Incredible stat. I was surprised when I read that last night. Normally they be encouraged to fall on their own sword before it gets to that point.
I mean, even we've sacked a German before the Germans. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? We get rid of a German before the Germans did. That's outrageous.
I think, Sam, I think you're right. I think it comes in the back of a fairly insipid World Cup campaign too, where they think, we need to change it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the great thing about Tam is he's got such a great insight into who's going to take over the job. I wish I hadn't written it down there, because he's all over it as if he's the fountain of knowledge. He's the widest guy I've ever known.
Always do our research before the show, Ali.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, listen, thanks to Tam, thanks to Ali. Don't forget, you can join us for the Women's Football Show. Kerry Pollock, Eva Olid and Alison will be on tomorrow morning. And over and above that, we've got the journos coming up this week, and we've got another special one-to-one guest on my new programme, Straight Talk, which I think if you are a music buff, you certainly are going to enjoy my guest this week. I'll give you details.
Did you get Bono?
Sorry?
Managed to get Bono?
Well, to be fair, by the way, he was. I got somebody who was good pals with him. Does that work? Yeah, so well worth watching this week, because Scotland's finest music journalist, in my opinion, Billy Sloan, is with us this week, talking about the people he's met, the stories. It was an absolute blast listening to him telling us how he interviewed Grace Jones in a bath just with bubbles. It's well worth watching. That's all I'm saying to you. The football show. Lee McCulloch will be back with us on Friday as well on the football show.
Hopefully he's not injured after the Masters. Did you see the Masters?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly.
Hopefully your carpet's a bit better than that one at Braid.
Well, I was just about to say to you, every one of the boys has been talking about it. I mean, the Masters, at the best of times, you want a good surface. It wasn't great. It wasn't a great spectacle. In the end, congratulations to Celtic. They won it with their side. But, overall, not a great advert for the surface to be playing on.
No, and a few, I'm not sure if the surface was to blame for some of the challenges that we saw.
Yeah.
I was speaking to Ian Murray yesterday, who obviously played for Hibs in it. I was at a function yesterday, and he said that it was literally a road with a carpet put on top of it. There was no give under it, and the ball was soft. He said that you couldn't get two worse things to play five-a-side football. and I think he smashed Alan Hutton as well, he said. It was typical Ian Murray.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And that's just two of the things that were wrong with the overall tournament. But congratulations, Celtic won the tournament, and I think it should grow and grow, but hopefully with a better surface. Thanks to Ali, thanks to Tam, from myself, Peter Martin. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to join the football family. From everyone here, thanks for watching.